Hi, good evening. Welcome to Community Homeworks Workshop this evening. We're glad you're joining us. My name is Jason Byler. I'm the Education Manager here at Community Homeworks. If you're watching this live, please comment in the comment section to let us know where you're joining us from. Also, if you'd like to join in the discussion or ask a question, please put that in the comment section as well, and we'll try to answer those questions as soon as we can. If you're joining the broadcast afterwards, the recorded broadcast, you can still ask the questions in the broadcast section. It just might take us a little longer to get an answer to you. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit home repair organization in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We have a mission to empower homeowners to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. We get funding for our work through grants and gifts and donations and things like that. So if you find value in tonight's workshop, please visit our website, communityhomeworks.org, and make a donation to help us continue this work. Tonight's workshop, we are going to be talking about frozen pipes. Our instructor is Steve Randolph. He's from ER Plumbing, and we're really glad Steve's here to join us. We're excited to hear about what else is going on with frozen pipes, what we can do to keep our pipes from freezing up in cold weather and all that. I also wanted to thank Tiana Harrison, who was an AmeriCorps service worker here at Community Homeworks and originally developed this class a couple years ago. So thank you, Tiana. The class is a great one, and it's very valuable to our community, so thanks. Steve, thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you, Jason. So like Jason mentioned, as I kind of go through, if you have any questions, please comment, and Jason's kind of in the back manning the computers, and we'll bring those to my attention. I'll answer them as best I can. And if I get confused or lost, he'll jump in and save the day. So we'll kind of jump in here and just kind of get started. Frozen pipes in Michigan, that's a very common problem that happens either due to heat loss, electricity loss. Sometimes you get squirrels or something that will chew a little hole in the house and move the insulation out of the way, and you get that sneaky Michigan breeze that squeaks right in there and will freeze pipes, which will cause all kinds of hassle. So to start it all off, when do pipes start to freeze? 32 degrees and below. So if it's 32 degrees out or 35 degrees out, and we've really got a strong wind blowing from the north, then you get with the wind chill, and that'll really drive it down. So you kind of start monitoring and keeping track of water lines and anything that's 32 degrees and below. So we'll kind of start down through here. Introduction, just kind of the outside freezing. And power outages, a lot of that stuff you can't really do anything about the power outage. We'll kind of go over some tips I can give you when we come to that. So why do pipes freeze? Pipes freeze because it's cold outside, and as the water cools and turns to ice, water is one of the few things that actually expands when it freezes. So you hear the, if you go on vacation out west and they're talking in the mountains and stuff, and the water will get down inside the rocks and it'll freeze and it'll split rocks. So when water gets inside pipes, it's a really powerful force. It could do a lot of damage in a really short period of time. So kind of check my notes here real quick. So a question that I get from customers when I show up at their house is, what temperature should I keep my house at? And I always say, whatever the temperature is that you feel comfortable at. If you're going to go on vacation, you may feel comfortable turning it down a little bit. My wife and I turn our house down a little bit at night and then back up during the day. But it's kind of what you feel is most comfortable for you. I mean, if you are happy putting on an extra layer and then like a hoodie sweatshirt or something like that, you can keep it a little cooler. But I'll just kind of throw out what we do. We keep the house during the day about 68, 67 degrees, somewhere right in there. But I have been in other people's homes where it's a little cooler. And of course, then you go into grandpa or grandma's house and it feels like it's 80 degrees in there. So general rule of thumb is just whatever makes you feel comfortable. That's a good thing to kind of go with. What are some other related factors to pipes freezing? As I mentioned before, the outside of the house, you should hit, you've got your outside of the house, then there should be some insulation and then drywall, and then that inside that drywall is the heated space. So if you have a house that is poorly insulated, that is certainly something that you would want to take care of to keep the cold air out, because basically the insulation, I like to say it's a shield to keep the cold from penetrating inside the house. So we'll take an example. If you have a kitchen sink, we'll pretend here, let me scoot the camera up a little bit here. Sorry for the close-up. Zoom this in here. All right, so here's my lovely artwork. We'll pretend this is our kitchen sink. We're kind of looking at it from the side. So this here, where's my marker? This here would be the outside of the house, and this is where your insulation would be. So a lot of the common things that I see that where you have pipes freezing, one of them is the kitchen sink. The kitchen sink is almost on an exterior wall, so this is where all the cold is trying to get in. And like I mentioned before, if you get maybe a little squirrel tried to come in here and took away the insulation, now all you have is a little bit of drywall between the cold and your pipes. These two lines right here, and even where they they kind of run back, they run back down into the basement, come down and go this way. This area kind of right in here is the most common place I find where pipes will freeze. So the first step is you want to make sure that the insulation that's in the outside walls is complete. So there's different methods. They can drill holes in the outside and inject. Now I see they can inject foam. They can inject blow-in insulation, just something to help keep that outside wall nice and insulated. Some tricks, if that's not an option, or like right now, it's winter time out, and if that hasn't been done, it's kind of too late for right now. So for some tips and tricks, what you can do is open the door here on your cabinet. Just kind of swing them open so that you can look right straight in here. And with those doors being open underneath the kitchen sink, you're letting the heat that's in the house kind of work its way right in here. So then this area will be nice and warm. Another thing which you can do is at the box stores, which are Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's, you can buy the pink insulation, and it has paper on one side, the pink insulation on the other, and you can kind of cram it right here so that the insulation is between the outside of the house and your water lines. Because again, like I talked about the shield, this insulation right now is acting as a shield. It's on the inside of the house versus in the wall, but it'll accomplish the same thing. It'll keep that cold from kind of marching its way through and then freeze these water lines. One of the questions I also get is, okay, I go to turn on my kitchen faucet and I don't have cold water, or I don't have hot water. What do I do? If this isn't open, I would make sure your doors are open. Maybe put a little fan over here on the floor so that it's blowing hot or warm air into this cabinet space. The other thing I recommend doing is your faucet, is turn your faucets on. Usually when they freeze, it's one side, it's the hot or the cold. I know there's a huge debate, hot water always freezes faster, but I checked on YouTube, and that's not really I guess they're still arguing about that on YouTube. It's kind of funny. I'm a plumber, so I do kind of geeky things and jump on there and look at plumbing things, but there's a huge debate. Does the hot freeze first or does the cold freeze first? I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter. One of them froze. We have a problem. We need it to get fixed. So we'll pretend it's the hot side. So if you turn your faucet on and you're just getting a little tiny trickle or no water at all on the hot side, but the cold side is fine, so now you know that the hot side is frozen solid. So what I would do is shut your cold side off, open up the hot just a crack, so that when it thaws, you know. So that's if everything goes well, and I'll show you. It comes up on the camera. Sorry for the close-up again. So this is galvanized pipe. This is really common in a lot of the homes downtown. You can see the diameter, see how thick the fittings are, and even the thickness of the galvanized. So if this freezes, we'll say this is sitting right here underneath our sink, and it freezes right here. Sometimes you could tell where it froze because it'll be frosted. It'll have frost on it. Kind of like if you put a metal ice cube tray in the freezer, how it gets that frosty feeling on the outside. This will be frosty. And so with this door being open, hopefully the heat that's wafting in here will thaw this out. You'll be good to go. Fingers crossed if you're lucky. Now, if you have copper pipe, I'll zoom in here, you can see how much thinner this is. So generally what happens with this pipe when it sits in here and it freezes right here, it's going to split. It'll actually pop open and it'll be a little rupture right here. And be careful because that little split will be super sharp. So the hot water doesn't work. You look down here at your copper pipe and you can see where it's split. You need to get your water shut off ASAP, because if this ice melts, it's going to spray water out because the pipe has ruptured. Because as I mentioned before, when water freezes, it expands. And this copper isn't near thick enough or strong enough to be able to handle that amount of pressure as it expands. So if you've got copper lines and you can see where it froze, or even if you can't see where it froze, it's a really good idea to go down into the basement and shut your water off, or at least monitor things, because if this pipe ruptured and you can't see it, same thing, it's still gonna spray. Speaking of insulation, kind of going backwards here a little bit. So a couple tips, I mentioned the insulation in the wall, and I also mentioned stuffing a little insulation between the back of your cabinet and your water lines to act as a barrier. You can also use this foam insulation. A lot of times it splits, so you can just pop it over the pipe, boom, it's done. And what that does is, again, it's all about insulation and protecting the cold, or protecting the pipe from the cold. So this is another form of a shield, if you will, that keeps the cold from penetrating this. Now, I have seen customers that will take this and then run a water line outside. This isn't going to protect it. It has to have a heat source. It's got to have a way to maintain the temperature inside the pipe. So insulating a pipe and laying it on the ground doesn't matter. The cold will march right through this and get inside. So that's kind of a quick scenario here on this. If you've got water in usually it's a faucet that doesn't work, you need to do a little exploratory work and figure out what's going on. And I definitely would recommend becoming familiar with how to shut the water off to your house, because if a pipe ruptures, you're going to need to find it in a hurry, because it'll usually you'll hear like a bang as the water starts to flow again, and be water going everywhere. It's one way to take a nice ice cold shower not being planned. So the other thing, let me back you off a little bit here. Oops, everything's opposite. There we go. Okay. So another thing that freezes a lot in the wintertime is we call them outside faucets, or a frost-free faucet, or a hose bib. Push you guys away a little too far. A very shaky cameraman. There we go. And the main reason these fail, as Jason was nice enough, is because the homeowner left the garden hose hooked onto it. This is in Michigan. This is a huge no-no. If you've got a hose hooked up to your faucet right now, pause this, run outside and unscrew it, because you're just asking for trouble. Because what happens is the hose will freeze and the ice will slowly work its way up, come right back into here, and it'll split it. This will actually have a rip in it, if you will. The kind of crazy thing about that is it's not going to spray water, because as you turn this handle here, it actually shuts the water off way back here. So this rod that runs through here is the kind of the buffer zone. This would be where your wall is at. This is, you know, back to here again. This here would be right out. Let's see if I can draw something here. Lay down my marker. So your outside faucet would come through the wall. There's your little spout and your little handle. So when this freezes, it freezes usually inside the house. So you're not going to know that it froze until you go to wash your car or water the flowers May of next year. And what happens is you turn it on and you're using the hose going, oh my gosh, this water pressure is terrible. That's because the other half of the water pressure is going into your basement and it's flooding your basement. I change out dozens of these every spring because somebody forgot to unhook the hose and leave it, just unhook it. That's all you got to do. Just unthread it, take it apart so that you're protected. Now, even though this is a frost-free, which means it's technically not supposed to freeze because the water shutoff is inside the house, one good way to maintain these, or at least keep them to last longer, is your little insulated box here. That just slides right over the top of it, and that will protect it. It's not really necessary. I always kind of base things on what do I do as a plumber. I don't use these. It doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean that it's not a good idea to do it. But if you've got a frost-free, you really shouldn't have to. But if you've got, I'll crowd in here again. If you've got something like this we call it, it's a boiler drain. As you can see, the handle shuts the water off right here. So this is outside your house. Just picture that the wall is right here. Then I strongly, strongly recommend one of these. This just slides right over the top. There's a little gizzy inside there that fits over the valve. And you just pull the cord tight, and it'll just sit on there all by itself. And this helps insulate it to keep this from freezing. Back in the day, this is, customers, oh, why did they do that? That's all they had back then. They didn't have the frost-free. So if you've got these, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Same thing with the hose. Make sure it's unhooked and go buy one of these. I don't see a price tag on it, but they're not too pricey. And you just slide it over there in the winter. And then in the spring, you pull it back off, put it in the garage so you can find it again next year. Boom, you're done. You're ready to rock and roll.
How would a homeowner know if they have a frost-free or a boiler type?
These are the two styles. I'll come up here real nice and close. So this is a frost-free. You can see how long this rascal is. And I mentioned when you spin this handle, there's a rod that comes all the way back over here and actually shuts the water off back here, which means all this water that's in here will just gradually drain out because it's literally shut off back here. So a boiler drain like this, when you turn this handle, it shuts it off right here. And again, like I said, this right here is your outside wall. So all of this is outside. So that's not protected. This pipe right here is full of water, and so this is going to freeze. This will come back here and pop your pipe. Most of the time when you have one of these, you've got steel or you've got, you've got galvanized pipe. So again, like I said, if it does freeze, the pipe is thick enough and strong enough that it can withstand the freezing force of the water. So again, if you've got one of these, I recommend the little insulating cap here. It'll help protect it and keep it warm. Another type of pipe that they have in homes today is PEX, P-E-X. And this style here is a crimp ring. And this style of pipe, depending on if this is the expansion pipe. I can't, yep, so this isn't. So this pipe here, it goes together with the crimp rings. It's super fast, it's efficient. All the new homes that I do, PEX is the only thing I use. I don't use copper anymore. They haven't used galvanized since before 91 when I started. The one downfall of, there's two different styles of PEX. The PEX that usually takes the crimp ring is not the expansion type. So if this freezes, there's a really good chance that this is going to split. There's another style of PEX where you put a fitting on. There's an expander that goes in, expands the sleeve, and you put the fitting inside. That pipe will expand and contract as it freezes. So there's two different styles of PEX. But PEX now is for a do-it-yourselfer. It's the way to go because you just buy one tool. It's like a big pair of clamp, like big pair of crimpers or scissors, if you will, and it's just 1/2 3/4. That's all you use. And if you were going to redo your water lines in your pipe, PEX is the only way to go. You certainly don't want to solder and have to buy the expensive copper. But PEX is the third and final water line that you've got. And what's kind of cool about the PEX is it already comes with an R factor, like an insulation factor. So it will definitely last longer in the cold than copper will, because the PVC is an insulation factor. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you could see it's kind of in between the thickness of the galvanized pipe and the copper pipe. Other kinds of insulation, like I mentioned before, we've got the foam that splits, and you just drop the pipe in there, and this comes right back together. Sometimes it'll have little tabs, and you pull the tabs off, and this will just, you touch it or squish it together, and it sticks. So it's a permanent fix. Again, this is great for water lines that might run along an exterior, the exterior wall of your basement. Like if you've got one of the original homes or older homes in Kalamazoo, they've got the rock foundations because all the farmers wanted the rocks out of their fields, and it was a great building material. But as the house shifts and cracks, you might get a little hole in the mortar joint, and wind blows through. This will help protect your pipe. Kind of a side note, if you do a lot of watering with sprinklers or something like a garden hose, you got one of the sprayers that does the little rainbow thing, and you come down in your basement and you see a water line or just a wet spot in your basement that's straight as an arrow. It's because the water line, the cold water line, is condensating, and you can wrap it in this and it'll keep it from dripping. Another thing customers do is sometimes they'll wrap the hot water side. It's kind of an energy saver thing, because if the warm water line is insulated, you're not spending as much energy to keep that line heated. So it's another pretty good deal, and they're super easy to put on by yourself. All you need is a little razor knife, or sometimes it looks like this one here. Someone just ripped it, and it's good to go. Fiberglass insulation. It's another really good one, simple to use. I'll come in here and crowd again. Pick it out so you could see. Everything's reversed. Where are you? There you are. You can see here, you just wrap it around the pipe. This comes in one great big coil. I think it's 25 feet long, and you just slowly wrap it around the pipe as you move back, and that's an easy way to insulate the pipe. Again, if you're in a basement that's really cold or there's wind blowing, like if you get a wind like we had the polar vortexes a couple years ago, there'd be a certain side of the house where if the wind's coming from the north or the west off the lake, blowing in the corner of your house, this is a great thing to wrap your pipe with to keep it from freezing. It's pretty inexpensive. It's less than $5 for 25 feet. You can cover quite a bit of pipe with 25 feet of insulation. A couple other really helpful items is, everyone's heard of the great stuff. This is awesome. So those cracks I was telling you about in the rocks or in the foundation, or even If you've got for some reason, you've got a hole in the side of your house, like maybe an old cable line ran through there, or an old electrical wire or something like that, this is great because great stuff. Pop the cap, screw this on here. And one thing I do want to recommend is safety glasses and gloves of some sort, because this stuff goes everywhere. And once it gets on your shirt or your gloves, it's on there forever. So you definitely don't want this in your eyes because you'll be a very unhappy camper. But what's cool about this is you can go anywhere with it. You can go in the foundations, you can go along the edge of your house. They actually make a different style. I think it's a blue can where you can actually go around if you've got maybe a crack or the house is settled a little bit. You've got a gap where your window and the frame meets. You got to be careful with this because it expands. I don't know. It expands multiple times the amount you put in there, and the stuff in the blue can doesn't expand quite as much. So you can go around the frame of a window or a door. Or something where you don't really, where there would be an issue if it expanded too tight. Sometimes going around a window, it'll jack the window up and you won't be able to open it in the summer. But can of great stuff. Kind of walk around the house, find where all the cracks are at, because once you open this can and start using it, you have to use it all because you can't. I guess you could save it, but it's pretty difficult. It's easier just to go around and kind of map out all the locations you want to hit. Back to your wall here again. If you have the little critter came in here and nibbled a hole through the side of the wall and the insulation, stick this little nozzle in there and give her a good squirt, and that'll fill it up and seal it. Another good item to use is 100% silicone. That's 100% silicone, either white or clear. I kind of like the clear because it kind of disappears into the background and you can't really see it. This is great for around windows. Again, back to the cracks and stuff in the foundation. You can put this in a caulk gun. I knew Jason would be able to hook me up. So you've got your caulk gun. Nip the tip off. Poke a hole in because there's tin foil in here that will keep the silicone from coming out. So nip the end off, which this is a handy dandy gun. You got nip that off right there. Use the little rod to shove down and break the foam or the foil that's in there. You're ready to go. This is good for around windows, window jambs, window seals. It can go around the door frame, not the door itself. You want to be able to get out when you're done. But this is great. Sometimes you even get some wind coming in from around electrical outlets. You guys know what an electrical outlet is. You can go around that with this. Take the cover plate off. Yeah, definitely want to try and keep the wind out of your house. That'll eliminate things freezing, especially going back to here. If you stick your head in here and you're like, holy smokes, it is so cold in there. There's usually an outlet in here for the garbage disposal or the dishwasher, or sometimes they just stuck one in there because they knew they would need one. Sometimes around that box, the wind just comes shooting right in there because, again, back to your insulation, the old school insulation was usually the blown-in stuff. There's all kinds of different old school insulation. What you want to do is just seal the cracks. It's just kind of like when you, on a windy day, if you're camping and you're trying to keep nice and warm, you want to seal all those cracks so you can't feel the wind blowing in. Do we have any questions?
No questions. We've got a couple comments, but I'll save them to the end.
Okay. So we'll kind of show a couple other things here. Now this is a good example of a T in a shutoff valve here. So we'll pretend that this is a hard water line and this is going to the outside to go to pick up one of these. Now, I always recommend if there is a valve that's going to an outside faucet, you can see this one's in the off position. I guess this is a better way of showing you. You can see this is in the off position. When you want to open it, you want this handle to run in line with your pipe. So this would be on. I would say that this is what you want it to look like spring, summer, and in the fall. If you have this option, is to go down, shut that off. That's shutting the water pressure off to this hose. And then to kind of really make things safe, that's when you would go outside after you shut that valve off on the inside and open this up, open that valve up so that there won't be any pressure in this tube or the water line that comes up and meets it. There'll be no pressure on it. So over the course of time, water will just slowly trickle out of here. It might evaporate. It's gone. There's no chance of this freezing. Same thing with your boiler drain. Same scenario. You've got that valve sitting over here inside. You want to make sure that's shut. Then you can come out here to this one and open this handle up. So any water that's in that pipe all the way back to where the valve is that you shut it off, all that's going to drain out. So then again, there's no chance that this is going to freeze because there's no water in it. And I would say there's no water trapped in it. Because if you shut this back down, now you've sealed it. And if there's any water in here, as it freezes, it expands. I didn't do my research, so I can't tell you how much water expands, but it's substantial. So that's a couple little quick tips, if you will. If you've got the option to turn those valves off to the outside faucets, that's a great thing to do, definitely. Sometimes you go, all right, so my pipe's frozen. What do I do? I don't know where it's frozen. Now what? So if you know where it's frozen, so we'll pretend you don't have any hot water here again. So you're going to come down, and you know this hot water line, you can follow it. Where does it go? Follow it back, and there'll be another T where that water line goes off and picks up another fixture. Go to that fixture, do you have water there? If you do, then you know. So we'll say it comes over here and then tees off and goes to another part of the house. So this works. You have water here, but you don't have here. So now you know you've got something frozen in this section right here. It's doing a little detective work. So step one, open this up, get some heat blowing in here. If you have a source of heat like a halogen light, a 100-watt light bulb like the mechanic ones where they're in a little cage, you can kind of hang them on stuff. I would bring one of those over and hang it on the pipe, whether it's maybe have a source of heat, maybe put a heater over a little bit, electric heater, and then a fan kind of blowing in this general direction. Electric heaters, I kind of like to keep those at a distance because if this froze and ruptured and it's spraying water, you certainly don't want an electric heater in close proximity. But even if you're kind of shooting it across the room with a fan, that's going to make a difference. Because again, all we have to do is get that temperature in the room above 32 degrees and things are naturally going to start to thaw. If it is ruptured, if it is split, that's when I first started talking today, I said, do you know how to shut your water off? Can you shut your water off? I can't tell you how many times I come into a customer's house, one or two things happen. One, they have no idea how to shut their water off. Number two, they know where the shutoff is, but they've never shut it off. They have no idea if it works or not. My suggestion tonight, tomorrow, shut your water off in your house. Can you do it? Do you know where it's at? If you're on city water, the water meter, usually it's inside. Some of the old ones are on the outside of the house, but usually it's in your basement and it's on the road side of the basement, because from the road, they'll run a water line in right straight into the house, and that's where it's going to be at. And there should be a valve. There'll either be a valve, where'd it go? There'll either be a shut-off valve on the water line that comes in from the city and goes up to the house. There'll either be a valve like this where you got to twist to shut it off, or there'll be this is called a ball valve, and you want to come in here a little closer. You want, again, to shut it off, you want this to form a 90-degree angle with the pipe. This is water shut off. This is water back on. So again, my suggestion would be can you shut your water off? You get a house that hasn't been shut off in a really long time, you may not be able to. And then you're kind of in a pickle. So that's something I would be aware of. Can you shut it off? Do you know where it is? So back to here, it's split, water spraying everywhere. Oh my gosh, Jason, what do? We run over to where the water meter is, we shut the water off. What you do from there depends on how handy you are. Are you a do-it-yourselfer? Like I mentioned, they've got PEX, so you could come back, replace that line. It kind of depends on how handy you are, and if you've done this, do you have the tools to do this? If you don't, you're probably going to have to call one of us plumbers. We're going to come out. We've got the stuff on our van. Boom, bang. We're going to take care of it. It's going to get fixed. So it's just, can you fix it? Yes. There's YouTube videos. I'm a plumber, and there's stuff out there that I've YouTubed because I've never taken it apart. I don't know. It's like a mechanic. Usually mechanics are good on a couple different makes of cars. They're familiar with others, but we'll say like a Ford. Everyone likes, he's really good at taking apart Fords. Well, all of a sudden you get a Subaru in here. Yeah, it's a car. It takes gasoline, but they're two different monsters. So YouTube videos are great. If you feel you're a pretty good do-it-yourselfer, I tell customers, if you're confident, you're pretty handy, go for it. If you're going to have to call the plumber anyway, why not give it a shot? So that's kind of, you kind of got to use your judgment if you want someone else to come in and do that, or if you can fix it yourself. But a little bit of detective work will also save money too, because if the plumber just has to walk in and goes, okay, there's a leak, let's fix it, and out the door he goes, boom, you're good to go. So a little bit of detective work, walk down in the basement and go, aha, there it is. That's pretty handy for them. I don't know if I missed anything, Jason? Jason's my backup. I think I got it all.
If you realize that the water is frozen outside of your house on the far side of your meter, what do?
You have to call the city, because usually the city's responsibility is from the meter to the street. It's kind of a gray area because sometimes their responsibility stops from the valve in your yard. That's where it stops, and the rest is yours. But I would start with the city, because if it's outside and it ruptured and there's water spraying, they need to be called anyway, because they can shut it off right at the street. So if it's on the outside of your house and water spraying, it's usually going to be bubbling up out of the yard. You're going to have to call the city. They're the ones that will be able to find the shutoff valve and have the tools, because that's about 6 feet deep. You need a really special tool to get in there in order to shut that off. So city, definitely. And usually they do have 24-hour service. I've called them in a couple times, and they're usually, if it's an emergency, they'll have somebody there pretty quick. They're usually pretty good about that. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions,
do we ever need to worry about waste pipes freezing, or don't they freeze?
They definitely freeze. Usually waste pipes freeze when they're buried too shallow. By code, I believe they're supposed to be 48 inches below finished grade. And below finished grade is grass. So wherever you mow or walk, that's finished grade. They should be 4 feet below. Usually you run into trouble when there's a driveway. For whatever reason, cars driving over driveways with a sewer line running, not 48 inches, and sometimes even 48 inches. When we had the polar vortex a couple of years ago, there was many times where pipes froze. And then that's not a do-it-yourselfer. You've got to call a drain cleaning company. A lot of what they'll do is they'll have jetters, and they'll have water, and they'll jet water through there, hot water through there, and they'll break it all up and it'll go. One thing I did forget, back to my drawing here. Let me move it over here a little bit. Jason's stole half my screen. There he is. So every now and then the city will give out warnings. There's a possible pipe freeze, turn your water on. And what that's doing is you turn just pick a faucet, it doesn't really matter. I usually do the kitchen sink, and turn the cold water on so that it's like a number 2 pencil lead thickness. So not a lot of water, just a tiny little steady stream. Because moving water technically doesn't freeze. Yeah, we all see rivers freeze, so that's not completely true. But when the city goes, oh my gosh, there's a water freeze warning, turn your waters on, a trickle, pay attention to them. That's super important, because when the ground is frozen hard as a rock, they're going to prioritize. There's going to be emergencies, water main breaks. Keeping the hospitals and the municipalities up and running are going to take priority. And because you didn't listen or your water froze, you're going to be kind of down the road a little bit. So you could be without water for a bit. So definitely when the city puts out their turn on a faucet warning, don't ignore that. They usually will bombard. You'll get emails. It'll be on the radio. It'll be on the news. The people will be talking. It'll be pretty tough to miss. But when they issue that warning, follow that. Take heed, because what that'll do is that'll move water from the street up to your house and into your house at a slow little trickle, and it shouldn't freeze. So I think that's the last little tidbit I did want to go over.
Okay, we've got a couple comments here. April said that she needs to use channel lock pliers to turn her valve off, her main valve. Is that a problem?
It's certainly something that April's going to want to probably address, depending on where that valve is at. Sometimes the city, it's their responsibility. Anytime there's a main shutoff to the house, I say start with the city. Those guys know the codes. They know if they're responsible or if they're not responsible. I know there's a big movement here in Kalamazoo by the water department right now is to replace all the old water meters. The new ones they measure water with a laser, so they're ultra accurate. Can't say that. They're ultra accurate, which is great for the city, not so much for the person using the water, because your water bill is going to go up, because now it's accurately measuring the water that you're using. That being said, depending on where that valve is located, April, sometimes the city will take responsibility for that and change it out. So I would at least call the city and say, hey, could you come and look at it? The valve's not working, and go from there. And they might come out and say, yeah, nope, it's not us. You got to call a plumber. I would recommend that, because if you're in a panic and you're cranking away because you got to get the water shut off, and you snap that brass stem off, or the pliers fall off and break, now what are you going to do? It's a good thing to have in an emergency, to have a pair of pliers, but I'd get that valve changed.
April also mentioned to make sure that you have the hole blocked. This is for using the great stuff foam, so it doesn't end up all over your house or on the outside.
That's true. That's a good point. You can stuff the pink fiberglass insulation. Kind of take a screwdriver and shove that in the opening or the crack, or nail a piece of 2x4 on there, or even some duct tape. Just something to act as a barrier, because she's right, that stuff it goes everywhere. And if you could keep it contained, it will fill every nook and cranny that you shot in there. That's a good tip, April. Thank you.
And the only other comment that we have is from Steve's his fan club. Uh-oh. So Sarah says, hi, Steve. So we're glad that Sarah joined us again tonight.
Yep. Hey, Sarah. Bacon. All right, perfect. I think that's it. Thank you for joining. It was my privilege to give you a little bit of information to hopefully make your life during the winter easier. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Great program. Lots of useful information, and we'll be getting in touch with you if we have more questions come in. Perfect. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you learned a little bit. And next Tuesday, we have a class scheduled for winter safety and security. So we'll be talking more about what to do if your pipes freeze, but also talking about carbon monoxide, talking about things like what to do when your furnace goes off, some things like that. So join us for that next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And thanks again for joining us tonight. Have a great evening, everyone.